Okay, we all ready to start? Okay, can you all hear me okay? Okay, brilliant. So we're Public Child Protection Wales, and we've been campaigning against the RSE, that's Relationship and Sexuality Education, for the last 2 years. We've worked incredibly hard in looking into details with regards to where this has come from. We've written letters to schools and local authorities, and we haven't really got anywhere with them. As most of you know, this RSE is going to be in every single Welsh primary school in Wales, and there's going to be no parental opt-out, and it's going to be from age 3. So I found out about this about 2 years ago. I met with Kimberly on a Zoom call, and what attracted me to the whole issue in the first place was the fact that it was an article that one of my friends had put on about teaching children about bondage in comprehensive school and being fully having full information with regards to sexual activity. Now, I kind of just didn't sit right with me because I felt that it was encouraging promiscuity to teenagers and young adults. So that was something that I didn't want for my own children. So I'm actually an accountant, so I haven't got any qualifications with this type of thing. But as many of you know, Kim has, and I'll pass you on to Kimberly now. So over to you, Kim.
Hello everyone. Most of you know I'm Kim. I'm the chair of Public Child Protection Wales. We set up Public Child Protection Wales when we realised there was massive flaws in our safeguarding. Our teachers were underqualified and there was massive gaps in training and provision. We soon discovered this was more than just a fight against RSE, this was a fight for change. So what we're going to be discussing today is what we have discovered within documents, frameworks, legislation and lesson content. We are told this education is inclusive, it's to safeguard, it's all these wonderful things. So what we're going to do with you tonight, if you will engage with us, we're going to do a little experiment. What we're going to do is we're going to get these balls, and every time you guys are concerned, right, so if that's what to do with the government, or lesson content, or whatever you are concerned about, I want you to put your hands in the air. Because really we shouldn't have no concerns. So by the end of this presentation, that bin there should be empty. So that's the experiment we're going to do, guys. So please, Captain will put the balls in the bin for you. Feel free to put your hands up every time you are concerned or you see a risk.
Okay, so we're going to go through the presentation as follows. So first of all, Kim's going to talk about the legislation. Then we're going to go on to Relationship and Sexuality Education, RSE, most of you are familiar with. We're then going to talk a little bit about comprehensive sexuality education. Some of you may not be aware of this, but RSE, Relationship and Sexuality Education, is actually derived from comprehensive sexuality education. And then we're going to go on to show you a bit of lesson content, mainly from the Scottish curriculum, because this education has been going on there for a good couple of years now. We'll then have a break, a coffee break, and then in the next session we will say about how did we get here. So there's a little bit here about the history, so a lot of you may find topics here quite upsetting, so just want to warn you beforehand. Then we're going to go on to a little bit of myth busting, because many people are told, as Nick just touched on there, that it's safeguards, that it's all about inclusivity. We're just going to go through a couple of those myths. Then we're going to talk a bit about the government response and then the people's response. So the whole presentation should take no longer than 2 hours. And we thank you all for being here. Before we do go on, I would just like to say a massive thank you to Sharon for arranging this today. So we have a massive round of applause for Sharon.
So this education is in 3 parts. We've got the legislation, the policies and the frameworks, and the lesson content. Now when you're discussing these issues with people, you'll probably be discussing frameworks, or the lesson content, or the legislation. It's very uncommon to find somebody willing to discuss all 3, or who even knows about all 3 really. So the legislation, this is the Curriculum and Assessment Wales Act 2021. This covers the whole of the curriculum. What this does, this mandates 4 subjects to our children from age 3 to 16 with no parental opt-out. Those subjects are English, relationship and sexuality education, religion, values and ethics, and Welsh. Those are the 4 mandatory subjects our government believes our children need to become healthy, happy, confident individuals. But this is secondary legislation. Secondary legislation never overrides primary legislation. So I want you to just keep that in your mind for when we come to the end. What we have within this legislation are parts on RSE, explaining what the schools must do for RSE. And what we've got something called the RSE code. This is what you will be shown now from your schools. This was only published in January 2022, but this legislation here was passed last March. It got royal assent in April. As you can see, section 77 is about the RSE code. And we'll just read it now. Before issuing or revising the RSE code, the Welsh ministers must consult the persons they think appropriate, in brackets, if any, and lay before the Senate a draft of the proposed code, or in the case of revisions of the proposed revised code. So what does that mean? That means they don't have to consult you if they don't think you're appropriate. And many of you haven't been consulted anyway, have you? It also means that that code that they're giving you now can change at any time. It can change tomorrow, it can change next week, it can change whenever. This is the legislation. And that brings us on then to RSE, Relationship and Sexuality Education. Why do we need RSE? Well, we are told this safeguards against sex abuse and inappropriate internet content, reproductive health and biology, meaningful relationships and being kind. Well, we've got a picture of a nurse there, specialist field. Are we expecting teachers to be nurses now? Then we've got the police. This is sexual safeguarding, that's a crime. Is it the police? Well, actually the police aren't really filled up on this neither. It's the sexual crimes team. So again, specialist field. Are we expecting teachers now to be specialists in sex abuse? And then we have the government. Whatever the government say, the teachers must enforce. So now we're expecting the teachers to enforce all government legislation and guidelines. This is what we've got here, guys. This is the Curriculum for Wales, Relationships and Sexuality Education Code. We have no choice but to take this into court. This is all the government has given us. Even though this isn't the main programme, there are still concerns here. So this is part of 2 documents, the RSE guidance and the code. What you'll find in these documents is there is no reference to male, female, boy, girl, man or woman. But what you will find is the word gender mentioned 35 times. When you look at the definition of gender, it says gender identity, not gender reassignment, which you're not going to get gender reassignment in primary school anyway. It says gender identity. That is not a protected characteristic. This was the previous code. This was the draft that they issued back in February 2019. This did hint that we would lose our parental opt-out, but the papers confirmed that we were losing it anyway. Page 4 of this draft gives us the information we need. Page 4 tells teachers to refer to UNESCO. UNESCO is a global sex education. And And that's why what we come to know is comprehensive sexuality education. So this is what you will find on the HUG website. This is the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. This was done on 87 studies. None were in Wales. A third were in third world countries, and over 40 were done in the slums of America. So this is supposed to be evidence-based, okay? Even though we've devolved government, we've been told this is a Welsh education. The studies were done in places that are totally relevant to us. What we have here is a rights-based approach. This document is pumped full of children's rights, beefed up with rights, exercise your rights, bodily rights. And then we've got something called the sexual and reproductive rights. This is concerning. In Wales, we have a hierarchy of rights, where children's rights override parental rights. But along with that, the children now have sexual and reproductive rights, which also override parental rights. The government, for some reason, doesn't want you to know about these sexual and reproductive rights. We added down to a petition because we wanted you to know. We believed you had a right to know. They removed it and replaced it with a pro-abortion website. So here we have what we've done now. We did a little bit of investigation and we came across this document here. Sexuality education in Europe and Central Asia. This document is very, very important. It's an overview of 25 countries. England is one of the countries in there, and page 174. What you find is a star by the word England, and on the bottom left-hand side of that page it tells you the studies were done in England, but they apply to the whole of the UK. But the most interesting page is page 8. What does page 8 tell us? Page 8 of this Sexuality Education in Europe and Central Asia tells us that we were the last in Europe to accept this sex education. It also tells us that all 4 UK governments signed up to comprehensive sexuality education on the 1st of March 2017. It also goes on to tell us which framework they used. Well, it's this framework here. The Standards for Sexuality Education in Europe by the World Health Organization. Now, the people who accepted this document were the Department of Health, Department of Education, Children's Commissioners, Children's Ministers, and more. So this document is something you really need to look into. You do not need a trained eye. We urge everybody to look at this document, especially the matrix from page 38. What this once again is a rights-based approach. Sex education from birth. Sexual rights. Voluntary, consensual, exciting sex. But let's read through these. We just read through the sexuality passage again. We just read through the sexuality part of this document. Okay, we won't read it all. We're just going to cover the sexuality. But please pay attention to the age in the corner there, 0 to 4. Information fed into a child, the skills the child will acquire, and the attitudes they develop. So we are told that we are misreading this, we misunderstand it. This is not about sex, it's about sexuality. So let's test that.
Yeah, so under sexuality it says, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation. Discovery of own body and own genitals. The fact that enjoyment of physical closeness is a normal part of everyone's life. And then under skills, we've got gaining awareness of gender identity. This is 0 to 4. Talk about or pleasurable feelings in one's own body. And then it goes on to say, express own needs, wishes and boundaries, for example, in the context of playing doctor. Now we're going to move on to 4 to 6. So again, under sexuality, we've got enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, and discover one's own body and genitals. And then over to skills, between the ages of 4 to 6. Sorry, pardon me. So also it says the meaning and expression of sexuality, for example, feelings of love, and sexual feelings. This is for 4 to 6 minds. Closeness, enjoyment, excitement as a part of human feelings. And it goes on to skills then. It says talk about sexual matters, communication skills, and consolidate their gender identity. Also, use sexual language in a non-offensive way. Now we're going to move on to 6 to 9. So under 6 to 9 then, we've got, they want to talk about sex in the media, including the internet, appropriate sexual language, again, use sexual language in a non-offensive way. And then, very worrying, 6 to 9, an understanding of acceptable sex, mutual, consensual, voluntary, equal, age-appropriate, context-appropriate, and self-respecting. Don't think there's anything that's appropriate, acceptable about sex and appropriate about sex when we're talking to 6 to 9-year-olds.
One common thing you'll find throughout all of these frameworks, as you get closer to the age of 9, that's where they start talking more about sexual intercourse. Seems to be a common denominator in these documents.
Okay, so we move on to 9 to 12. So obviously this is coming to the end of primary school and beginning secondary school. And under sexuality again, first sexual experience. Gender orientation, sexual behaviour of young people, variability of sexual behaviour, so really sort of promoting and encouraging early sexual activity for these children at this age. And then it says pleasure, masturbation and orgasm, and differences between gender identity and biological sex. And then under the skills then, they say that they need to be able to communicate and understand different sexual feelings and talk about sexuality in appropriate ways. And also to make conscious decisions to have sexual experiences or not. And then under the attitudes, acceptance, respect and understanding of diversity in sexuality and sexual orientation, and the understanding of sexuality as a learning process. And then the last one there is acceptance of different expressions of sexuality, kissing, touching, caressing, etc.
Now, although that document is not on our website in the Welsh Government curriculum, you need to read this document because this is the framework they accepted. What we say is this is the BMW. They signed for the BMW. They are not going to be driving an Astra into the classroom. The BMW is coming. But this document here, the technical guidance and sexuality education, UNESCO, this is on the hub right now. And like we said, it looks a bit better, it's beefed up with rights, but even then, even throughout here, there are some concerns.
Okay, so this is the UNESCO document now, and the learning objectives for 5 to 8, I don't know if you can see it clearly there. It's got the key ideas. People can show love for other people through touching and intimacy. So it's still really quite bad, this document. And then it's got learners will be able to state that people show love and care for each other in different ways, including kissing, hugging, touching, and sometimes through sexual behaviours.
Age 5 to 8.
So children should understand, so the key idea, children should understand what it is and what is not appropriate touching. So again, they want to define, children need to be able to define good touch and bad touch. So we have got a massive problem with this because they're actually encouraging the child to decide whether it's good or bad. and this has got a huge safeguarding issue in itself. Then we've got learning objectives on here for 9 to 12. So it says it's important to understand the key features of pregnancy. This is for 9 to 12. So learners will be able to list the common signs of pregnancy, describe the tests available to confirm a pregnancy, list health risks associated with early marriage, voluntary enforced, and early pregnancy and birth. I'm also just going to go back to here where it says it's important to be able to make our informed decision about sexual behaviour, including whether to delay sex or become sexually active. And then it's got a thing there saying to compare and contrast the advantages and disadvantages of choosing to delay sex or to become sexually active.
So that, that's age 9 to 12. That's actually on the government website now. But this is a comprehensive sexuality education, rights-based approach. So now what we're going to do, like we've said, this is a global sex education. It is in 52 countries all across the world, but we have difficulty getting people trying to understand this. So what we've done is we've brought together lesson content just from around the UK. We're not going to go no further than that. This is what has and is currently happening in the UK. So this one, I'll address this one myself because this one is really, really important. You heard things about childhood masturbation, and we've had people say to us, how can they teach that in a classroom? But it's so ridiculous. Well, the United Nations kindly published this package, and it's called All About Me. All About Me is a good package. It talks about hygiene, kindness, empathy, everything else. It does do that. But then they've got pieces like this inside there. And these are the rules about self-stimulation. This hit 241 schools in England, children aged 4 to 6. A simple Google search, you can find this information. What you will read is it came from Warwickshire Council. That is not entirely true. It has come from the United Nations. So there are rules about touching yourself too. Now lots of people like to tickle or stroke themselves as it might feel nice. They might play with their hair, stroke their skin, or they may even touch their private parts. This is really very normal. However, some people may get cross or say that it's dirty, especially when you touch your own privates. This is strange, as it's really very normal. However, it is not polite to do it when other people are about. It is something we should only do when we are alone, perhaps in the bath, or shower, or in bed. A bit like picking your nose. It is certainly not polite to do in the class when everyone is watching. As you can imagine, that did go viral, it got on Mum's Net and everything else. But for me, I have a huge concern here. We told this kind of education sexually safeguards. Well, let me just put this policy into practice for you. We have a group of children. Some children will touch themselves, some children will not. Some children are doing it because they've been neglected and it's soothing. We've got children with health issues, and we also got children that's being abused. Now what this has done here, this has told every single 4 to 6 year old in the country, if this goes all across the country, that it's okay to touch yourself. It's okay. It feels nice, you can do it. So early stimulation of genitalia going on there. And it also goes on to say, it is certainly not polite to do it in the class when everyone is watching. When children behave in this way, it's called a non-verbal disclosure. That's our cue to investigate. Yes, it could well be the sun, but that is our cue to investigate. It is certainly not polite to do in the class when everyone is watching. We have just programmed every single child in the country away from a non-verbal disclosure. This piece is now what we call a barrier to disclosure. Now, like I said, this went to 241 schools. How come the teachers did not know this had a barrier to disclosure? Simple, because they're not trained. They are nowhere near trained for this kind of stuff. It is a complex specialist field.
Okay, so this slide here is from the Scottish curriculum. You can find this quite easily. It is on the internet, and this particular slide here is lesson content for children aged 3 to 5. So we've got a diagram here: arms, bottom, ears, eyes, hands. Just parts of the body there. But then it goes on then to say penis, scrotum and testicles, and vulva. So between the ages of 3 to 5, Scottish children are being taught these terminologies.
Right, so you will get told that this safeguards, okay? Correct terminology safeguards. I'm telling you it does not. How can it safeguard? How can it? You've just given a predator the password to your child's genitalia. Okay? So, what we need to do, we need to understand the mind of a predator. Predators think children can consent and can engage in conversations. Now, before a child is harmed, a child isn't just harmed. It's a process the predator goes through. Whether that's discussion, play, tickle, or whatever, that's a process. We know predators, when they're engaging in conversation with children about their genitalia, they see that as a way of consent, okay? They see that as engaging and fair game. So why would we want to give very young children the skills to pinpoint certain parts of their genitalia? Scrotum, testicles, vulva. There's no need of it. If you want to teach your children correct terminology, that is your right. That's your right, it's up to you. But why would you want to give a password to them? Password. I was on Jeremy Vine today and I was mocked by my leading class. What, are you using comedic terms? Comedic terms? No. I tell you what we're using. Safe words. Safe words. You give your child a safe word for their private. But you also tell your child that nobody in the house is allowed to engage in that private. Especially tickling, no way. No, there is no such thing as good touch, no such thing as bad touch. Children cannot differentiate. So time and time again, we are told the correct terminology safeguards. Where's the research for that, man? The only research I've seen is how many children can engage in conversations about their genitalia. I have never in my life read an offender's narrative that says, or if a child can say it's a vulva, I'm not going to touch them. Nonsense. It is absolute nonsense. There's even a social worker in Somerset that's been there for 23 years and claims that when they work with predators, that's what they say. How can you work with predators if you're in children's services? You don't, right? So this whole thing, correct terminology safeguards, test it. You're given a password to your child's genitalia. Or you just put their name on the post and send them off to strangers.
Okay, so this is another slide from the Scottish curriculum, and this is for, is it 5 or 6? 5 to 8, this slide is. And if you can't see the writing there, it says, one way is that the woman and man love each other and they have sex. This is a special thing that grown-ups can do. It goes on then to describe how, what sex is. Now the issue I've got here, even though they say it's something that grown-ups can do, has anyone here got children? Right, from your experience, what do young children like to do? They usually like to do what grown-ups do, don't they? Yeah, exactly. So, again, this is wrong. So here's another slide here, and this is also for 5 to 8.
Yeah, so this actual image features on age 5 to 8 and 9 to 12. So as you can see, it's talking about the reproductive organs, but these images aren't children, are they? This is adult genitalia that we show to children, so there we are, we're desensitizing children there. These are children that's not even in double figures.
And here we've got a really concerning slide, also from the Scottish curriculum. This is for 9 to 12. Now, if you can read what's said here, it says, if a man and a woman are having sex and they both want to do it, the man can put his penis inside a woman's vagina and gently move his penis in and out. This should feel nice for both people.
Can you see how this is picking up pace in all these slides? Now, we're going to give you the links for this. These are actual lesson plans, PowerPoint slides, the activities are there, everything you need is there. Go get it, send it viral.
Run out of these. I'm playing.
There we are, we've got over 200 balls, guys. So we come back to that in a second. So here we are, as the children get a bit older, they start discussing actual sexual acts, different types of acts. Here we have oral sex, anal sex. You will see a lot about anal sex. Anal sex is promoted as a form of contraception to stop girls from getting pregnant.
And this is more slides from the Scottish curriculum. So it's got there again talking about anal sex. 44% of people do this, and yeah, a nice childish image there as well, which is probably why they're saying it's age appropriate, because obviously it's in nice colourful drawings there for them to understand.
This is 9 to 12. So, and as you can see there, guys, it's showing about the orgasms, the pleasure, the pressure points, nerve endings, and things like that. We keep hearing the term age appropriate. Is it because it's in cartoon form? We simply do not know. So here, these next few slides, now these are from a video, you will see a part of that video in a second. What these are discussing now, so these are age 12 to 15, right? So what they're discussing here, they're talking about females. I'm a mother of 2 boys, and the way they speak about females, I would be absolutely disgusted having my children viewing females in this way. 40% of women have tried anal. 30% will swallow. 40% like bondage. And can you see that hot dog there? That's a threesome. And when you watch the video, you'll see the 2 sausages coming in for the threesome. And then what we got here then is the dice game. This was actually commissioned by the UK government. It's a sex game. You can buy this from Ann Summers, but you will not get the government logo on it, unfortunately. The instructions here for the teacher, part of the instructions tell the teacher to hold their nerve. Very interesting. So here is a video that we did put together a while back now, not just showing little parts of the curriculum. So this is parts of the videos that your children will see from these lesson contents. So that last clip there, that was taken again from the lesson Scottish curriculum. This is in their PowerPoint slides. The video was endorsed by the NSPCC. Okay? So as you would have seen there, they were going through different types of porn. They said amateur porn, mature porn, and amateur they had somebody over a Zimmer frame. So I have asked the NSPCC to tell me, I want to know what amateur porn is. If mature porn is showing children people over a Zimmer frame, then what is amateur porn? The NSPCC will not answer. Here we have another article we've come across that 6-year-olds are forced to write A love letters to teach the accepting of diversity.
If that's not indoctrination, what is?
Yeah, exactly.
Now here is another framework you will find. This is the Trans Inclusion Toolkit. This, I think, is the 2019 version. We've got a new one now, 2021 version. What you see here is section 7.3 is the confidentiality and information sharing. And what this pretty much says is, if your daughter decides to be your son, they are not going to tell you. They will provide a uniform and a name. It is absolutely none of your business. But they wouldn't do that, would they? Would they? They did it wrong then. The child was transitioned for 2 weeks before the parents found out about it. But it's okay, we've got an updated version now, the Trans Toolkit. What the updated version does, it allows males and females to go on residential trips, share dorms, share showers and everything like that. Yeah, that's the new Trans Toolkit.
Now we're going to talk about the drag story hour. But over the summer holidays, drag story hour seemed to be a massive thing. There was a couple of drag queens which were going around the UK, and this particular drag queen on your sort of, what's that, left, your right hand side is ADHD, so he's the one that's been coming around the libraries in Wales. Now these drag queens, they have been coming to libraries all around the country, and it's actually been paid by our taxpayers' money because it's absolutely free for the people attending. These story hours are for 5-year-olds and over, and we believe that it's inappropriate because drag is really adult entertainment. It's not for children. It shouldn't be in children's eyesight. They shouldn't need to know what a drag queen is. But unfortunately, the councils all around the UK have decided that it's absolutely okay to have these individuals reading to the children.
So the first one we have there, she was from Scotland. Her name is Flojo. Then in the middle there we have somebody from America. Her name is Natalie. And if you can see the children around her there, the look on their face, what is she saying for them to have a look on her face? Well, she's having a mock interview. And this mock interviewer says, "Hey Natalie, what do you think about all the kids that look up to you?" And she says, "The kids that look up to me can suck my dick." And then that picture at the bottom, it then goes on to a man having feces dropped on his face. So Lucia's already told you about ADHD, which is very offensive. I've got ADHD. We do not call her ADHD, we call her ADH hard-on, because she seems to have a massive erection in nearly every single video and every single photograph. So obviously I am not a male. I did not notice this until somebody pointed it out. But this person is not wearing any underwear, and you can see that by the position of the enlarged penis.
And then we're just going to move on to some books to look out for. Now, I know just from the internet, that these books are already being distributed in schools in Wales, 55 schools in Wales to be precise. Altogether, throughout the UK, more than 800 schools have received these books. So this is Pop and Ollie editions of books. There's plenty out there, but I've just picked 2 of these, and the reason I picked these 2 is, I just picked them out, to be honest. So we've got, first of all, there's Penny Lives with Erica and Martina, and this book is for 3-year-olds and upwards. Now, if you read it, there doesn't seem to be anything too untoward in it. However, the whole gist of it is really showing, you know, there's new neighbours that come into the neighbourhood. Nobody likes them. They're all colourful and full of rainbows. The whole neighbourhood is grey. And the gist of the story is everybody that hates these rainbow people are horrible, and then they all end up coming round and welcoming the rainbow people. And as we know, the rainbow people is the LGBTQ. So straight away, before children, like at 3 years old, some children can't talk properly, a lot of children can't read, a lot of them still don't know the colours of the rainbow, but straight away they're learning about LGBTQ colours and flags. Now what's even more concerning is, what does LGBTQ mean, this book here? And this book is suitable for 8 years old, 8 years upwards. Now in this book, it talks about all different types of sexualities, including pansexuality, asexuality, and then it goes on to sort of say about gender being on a sliding spectrum. Our gender is not assigned at birth, and it's a case of the doctors just guessing your gender. And it's people that should be free to have their own gender identity. So it really does go into, you know, LGBTQ plus issues.
As if it couldn't get any worse. Has anyone heard about the school sex survey? Oh, interesting, right. So, you hear the words health and well-being, okay? So, where Scotland goes, Wales follows. Health and well-being. School sex survey put out by the Scottish Government, over 60 questions. These are just, there were so many questions, we didn't cherry pick, okay? We literally, these are random, okay?
Have you had vaginal or anal sex more than once?
This was given out by all the local authorities to the children up in Scotland. We first heard it was 9, then we heard it was 11, then we heard it was 13. So the more people are onto this, we do not have a definite answer, I'm afraid. All we know is the local authorities did issue this to the children in the schools.
So this is really concerning. How old were you when you had sex for the first time? And the first choice there is 13 years old or younger.
Sorry, who's this speaking to?
All
The children.
School, yeah.
School children, yeah. So there's lots of articles online about the school sex survey. It did make mainstream media, but it's only made mainstream media so the governments can, you know, slate each other. No concern for our children at all. So like Lucia said, the first time you had sex, 13 years or younger, that is statutory rape age. You know, so people writing this really don't know the law anyway.
So then it says, when you first had sex, would you personally say you wanted it to happen earlier? You wanted it to happen at that time? You would rather have had it later? You did not ask yourself that, or you prefer not to say? Again, this is, you know, encouraging children to think about sex, and if they haven't had sex, then what are these children going to be thinking when they're filling out this survey?
The thing is, if they've been asked have they had sex, you find a lot of children will pretend they've had sex or they've done things just to keep up with their peers. But this is, you know, once a child opens this, they probably think, well, should I be having sex? You know? Who's this?
Get him off.
Did you know about this? Last July, health and well-being. There was just one sex question on ours. It happened last July. I didn't hear about it until after this was published in the Telegraph, sorry. We went looking for the details to support this. We cannot find the survey. All we, well, from the information we can get, we've gathered that there was only one sexual question. When we've looked at the reports, we can't really find reports for the comp. We did find reports for the primary schools, and the findings there was concerning. 85% of primary age children believe every word their teacher says. With 75% of primary age children feeling accepted by their peers anyway. So this is something you need need to look out for. Again, buzzwords, health and well-being. And that's it, guys, break time now. I just want to say one thing. We've actually filled the bucket. Filled the bucket ages ago. You just hold on.